things are good. Will things have not gone bad? Learning, for example, just the most simple gardening skills and planting your garlic upside down. Get that out of the way, because you want to do that when there's a book called Gardening When It Counts, and I have a thing about, I reverse that and say, you want to garden when it doesn't count, so you can order pizza when you need to. Because in the long term, when it does count is not when you want to be learning everything on your feet. So, even grow a few plants on your windowsill, because you're going to learn a lot of things. Textile crafts that you are and related things like leather work keeps you warm, and how to stay warm or how to stay cold depending on your climate. Also, it's a great hobby if you can sew, if you can spin, if you can weave, if you can knit, because it's a great hobby in good times, so you can make gifts for all your friends and have something to do with your hands. But it's actually an important survival skill. And I actually, I can put the link up on the, if we want to later, but I have a small blog called Back to the Dark Ages. It was part of a radio show that really isn't much ongoing, but it basically has a few pages on why these things are important and resources that you can get to learn about some of these things. I've got also, in addition to basic gardening, if you can, learn anything you can about livestock animals, especially backyard animals like chickens, pigs, goats. I don't have goats because they eat gardens, but if you live in a suburb or something where you can't have anything, even if you just have pets, observe them, learn how they are, and then read as much as you can, because understanding and gaining some experience, even if it's over a weekend visiting a farm, again, will put you one step ahead of all the other people who don't even know that sheep can be really big and they can hurt you if you don't know that. You don't just walk into a pen of sheep and say, "Hi, I'm the shepherd." They can run you over. They can send you to the doctor. So, if you go and stay on a farm for a weekend, you're going to get some of this information. And finally, the most important thing I think you can do is study your local area and learn what traditional people in your area used to do to keep warm, put food on the table, did for transport, how they built houses. Because if things get really, really grim, you can modify what they did, and probably it will be easier to meet your needs. And that's going to be, again, that's back to that whole local thing, Because like in Ireland, for example, people traditionally did things with salt preserving and smoke and root cellars and things, and even the root cellars were dodgy because the climate just didn't allow for things like drying unless it was in a fireplace. And that's just one example. That you want to be local, and you can look at both ancient people, like if you're in North America, look at what the Native Americans did, and also what the pioneers did in your area, and you'll get a much better feel of what works and what doesn't.
Well, that's a very, very wise approach to it. One of the other things that I think from listening to you might be helpful is be around people that know skills as well, so you don't have to learn them all.
Well, exactly. Nobody knows how to do everything, and one of the best ways, I forgot to put this on the list, but one of the best ways you can learn skills, if you have any interest at all and have any free time, is to either join or make friends with or visit any of the numerous types of historic reenactors. Whether it's the Society for Creative Anachronism, whether it's that does sort of Middle Ages, whether it's Vikings, whether it's rendezvous or people doing the powwows, or people doing powwows are actually often real. So maybe I'm trying to think of I've drawn a blank on it, but there's a group. The Voyageurs are people who do 18th century reenactment on the East Coast, and then there's people in Buckskinners. That's it. There's people doing 19th century in the West. All of these groups of people often do public demonstrations. They're often more than happy to share with you how to cook over an open fire, how to use cast iron. If they're Vikings, how to set a fire with flint and steel, how to use a loom, these kind of things. And they're not only really good people to get to know, but you can have a lot of fun too. And whether you have the time to get really interested and want to learn how to make costumes and everything and go out and join them, or whether you're just kind of dropping in. Georgia Uri actually has talked about being around the local SCA, which is the group I'm in Texas, and how much fun it is to go and occasionally drop in and pretend you're in. The SCA is different because they actually do anything that's pre-1600. It's more of a club, but there's being able to just go and spend a weekend and watch people do things the old way And then you're going to find people that specialize in different techniques and things, and that's really the fun way to do it. There are other ways, of course. There's just like quilting clubs or clubs that are dedicated to like backpacking or camping, and was another good way of going at it. But I like the historical reenactment route myself.
Yeah, yeah, and also I would love to see the art of craft come back. I think we've lost a lot by doing that, and I know you and I have even talked about just sitting there knitting, that can put you in a trance state, and so you never know what gifts we might resurrect here.
Spinning is brilliant for that. Spinning is probably, of the traditional textile crafts, that's the one that it's almost impossible not to go into trance if you have a tendency to do that.
Yeah.
So just be careful where you spin.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Melody. That's quite helpful.
Certainly.
Thanks, Uranus Rising. And now we will hear from Plain again.
Okay. Do you have any advice for newcomers to the whole unseen world? Your exercises in Chapter 1 of your book looked like a good start.
Yes, I would say one of the most important things is to try to stay grounded, because there's a real tendency, and I write about this in the chapter, especially if you experience things for the first time and they're really out of your realm of experience, to become kind of disconnected and get so interested in the unseen world that we kind of forget about the seen world, or the world we usually live in. And I think that's really important. That whole idea of grounding, and the tree exercise that I have in the book is really a big part of that, where you imagine yourself as a tree rooted to the earth, and then you bring up energy from the earth and renew yourself with it. You stay connected, because that is really, I think, the biggest problem that a lot of people have. Even if they start out as a fairly grounded person, it's very easy to get kind of off into going 1,000 different directions, when you've got to realize that you still have to live in this world, as well as the unseen world is going to be there. It's always been there. You just haven't been as aware of it. It's not going to go anywhere. So, try to stay grounded in this one as well.
I hear that so often about the importance of staying grounded, but I think a lot of people have a lot of trouble with it, and so maybe you could give a couple of other suggestions if you have any.
Well, I find for myself that when I feel like I'm getting out there, and that happens quite a bit, especially like for several days after I've had one of these dreams. And when we first got married, my husband thought I had them every day, and actually I can go for a year without having them, and then I might have 3 fairly close together. By the third one, I am like really out there myself, and I find things that help are actual good hands-on distractions. Now, this is probably because I am a very craft-oriented person, but I will go and I will, set up a complicated pattern on my loom, or I will just go make dinner for my family. Maybe I'll deliberately cook something rather complicated that takes a lot of concentration. Digging in the earth and working in the garden are other good ways traditionally to do this, because even if, like with the spinning, even if you get a little bit trancy, at least it's focused on making yarn, or it's focused on making dinner, which you are then going to eat, or it's focused on digging in the ground and getting that plant and paying attention. Another really good way for people with animals is to just go talk to your pets, because believe me, they are grounded all the time. To cats in particular, and I'm particularly a cat person, but dogs as well. The cats, they see the other world. They know what's going on, but their food bowl is the most important thing. I mean, you're important too, and so is being petted, but they have their priorities. In fact, I've actually joked about writing another book called the Way of the Food Bowl, the Spiritual Path of the Cat. Because that's really much it. And, the cat-centered universe is it's all about me. Now, taken to extremes, that is obviously a problem. But when you're in this kind of diffuse state, you do want to pull it back and think about you as a human body in this world, because we're here for a reason. If we didn't want to be here on some level or didn't need to be here, we'd just stay in spirit all the time and we wouldn't bother to incarnate. But like I said, on a practical level, even, go out and have fun sometimes too. I mean, go interacting with people finally. So it's interact with pets and then finally interact with other human beings, because nothing will ground you faster than like going and having to have a conversation with somebody, particularly if you're not talking about your past lives in Atlantis, but go and talk to somebody like your parent or your sister or someone that is just, a good friend, but on a totally different topic, because it will bring you back into the world fairly quickly, usually. What you don't want to do, and I talk about this in the book too, is you don't want to, when you're in this kind of state, you don't want to ping off of other people who are also new, just like you were, and who are so excited that we're going to we're going to talk about everything cosmic, because that can just pull everybody kind of off track. But in general, again, work with your hands, talk to your animals, talk to people, and make things or do things, whatever that is. And sometimes even just mundane work. Concentrate on what you have to do here. And you may have to force yourself to do that at first, but once you're actively involved in that job or that experience, you'll come back down to earth pretty quickly, usually.
That sounds good. Now I need to get the Japanese novel "I Am a Cat" out of my head. You've got me off in Catland here. Okay, well, thanks for that. Now, I have a question. If you've got any suggestions on how someone could find a good card or rune reader in their neck of the woods, and then hopefully avoid the bad ones or the ones who aren't so good. Any suggestions on that?
Oh, definitely. And this is one case where references or referrals in personal experiences are going to save you a lot of time and money if you can. Most places, even Ireland has something like the Irish one is called the Paranormal Board. There's a lot of forums and things where they're often like part of local community sites where you can go, and if nothing else, you can just say, I heard about so-and-so. What is anybody's experiences? Now, sometimes, like on the Irish board, sometimes they get a little bit brutal, and I just ignore that because any psychic can have a good day or a bad day. But if you don't have any other choices, you can go on forums. Much better than that is talking to other friends or other people. Even asking the psychic themselves for references. If they're a good one, they won't mind giving you references to people you can talk to. A lot of people have testimonials on their sites. I'm going to be putting some up, but again, you have to take those with a grain of salt because you don't know who's actually making them. Same thing with psychic hotlines and stuff. Some of them are very, very good. Planet Stars, I know that because I've worked with them. They actually vet everybody. But I've also run into, there was one company who I shall not name that when I was first doing this, I wanted to apply at. And they had this was back when the internet was still fairly new, and they didn't have a lot of security, and there was a part on the site that I was going to apply for that said, for readers only for people that worked there. And I clicked, and I got there. And basically they had instructions on how to fake a reading. I mean, right there, exactly 1, 2, 3, 4. This is how you fake a reading, and I was just appalled. And so you never know when you're calling one of these places. Again, unless you talk to people first and get a reference, you don't know what they're going to be like at all. So that's really that. And the other thing you can kind of do is read the person's website if they have one, read a book if they have one out there, listen to interviews if there's interviews with them. You can often get a sense of things. I mean, if you like what you hear and you feel like you might be compatible with them, then, you contact them and find out, ask about them. Another thing you can go by, unless they are incredibly famous, this is just a personal thing with me, unless they are so famous that they're actually trying to discourage people because they're human beings and they're too overwhelmed. The pricing system, when Edgar Casey was first started doing his readings, he was a family man and he'd been a photographer. And he started doing more and more reading because more and more people were asking for them, and he wasn't charging anything. And finally, this young wife came and said that if he really felt he needed to do this, that he could continue.